The Egyptian god Ra turns out to be a being from another planet who enslaves humanity upon returning to Earth in the distant past. 8,000 years before Christ, a massive spaceship appears above a small village in the North African desert at night. It descends, emitting a bright beam of light while all the villagers flee in terror. A boy becomes mesmerized by the scene and is enveloped by the light. We then shift to 1928 in Giza, where archaeologists discover a huge stone statue with a ring-shaped artifact underneath. Professor Langford and his daughter Catherine arrive in Egypt to witness this mysterious discovery. In 1994, an older Catherine Langford watches a lecture by a young Egyptologist named Daniel Jackson. He tries to convince his senior colleagues that the Great Pyramid of Khufu, the Great Sphinx, and Egyptian writing originated much earlier than commonly believed. However, the scholars dismiss his unconventional theory and leave before he finishes. As Daniel exits the hotel, he is approached by Lieutenant Kowalski, who tells him that someone wants to speak with him and leads him to a car where Catherine is waiting. Catherine offers him a job translating ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Daniel declines and is about to exit the car, but Catherine reminds him that he has been evicted from his apartment, his scholarship has ended, and all his belongings fit into 2 suitcases. She gives Daniel a chance to prove his theories and hands him a plan for a trip. At some point, Daniel agrees to the mysterious offer. Meanwhile, in the suburbs, military personnel arrive at Colonel Jack O'Neill's home. His wife answers the door and informs them that he doesn't want to see anyone. The grieving colonel spends time in his son's room, who accidentally injured himself with Jack's gun, and O'Neill still cannot cope with the loss. The soldiers gently knock on his door and inform the colonel that General West sent them. They are there to inform him that he has been reactivated. We then shift to a nuclear facility in Creek Mountain, Colorado, where Daniel arrives. He is taken to a hall where the unusual stone artifact has been under continuous study since the 1920s. Catherine and other scientists inform him about the situation and ask for his help in deciphering the hieroglyphs engraved on stone tablets. Daniel examines the ancient artifact with amusement and then notices a translation of symbols on a board that one of the scientists is working on. He points out that the translation is incorrect and begins to correct the errors. Daniel translates the phrase, "A million years in the sky is the sun, God Ra sealed and buried for all eternity in his Stargate." After completing the translation, Daniel asks why the military is interested in Egyptian tablets that are around 5,000 years old. Colonel O'Neill interrupts abruptly, stating that his report claims the artifact is actually 10,000 years old. Daniel becomes confused as the Egyptian culture did not exist at that time. He inquires if there is a tomb under the stone statue, but the scientist responds that there is something even more intriguing. At this point, Colonel O'Neill cuts off the conversation, stating that the matter is classified and that civilians will only receive information with his permission. 2 weeks pass. Daniel continues to work diligently on the ancient tablets, trying to decipher some of the symbols. During a coffee break, he sees a guard holding a newspaper with an article about the constellation Orion. Suddenly inspired, Daniel grabs the newspaper and rushes back to his desk. He circles the constellation with a marker and compares it to a symbol on the stone. The next day, Daniel meets with the scientists and military personnel. General West is skeptical, doubting that Daniel can decipher in 14 days what other experts could not solve in 2 years. Despite this, Daniel presents his theory that the symbols previously deemed words are, in fact, constellations. He explains that they are arranged in a specific order, with 7 points indicating a path to a destination. Daniel further elucidates that to determine a direction in 3-dimensional space, 6 points are necessary to pinpoint the exact location, while the 7th point serves as a reference to set the course. He shows what the 7th point looks like on the map, but one of the scientists asserts that this symbol does not appear on the device. Confused, Daniel asks which device he is referring to. Following an awkward silence in the room, Colonel O'Neill allows Daniel to see the ring made of alien minerals that was found beneath the stone slabs. Daniel is taken to the control room, where scientists activate the portal covered with numerous ancient symbols. Several interlocking rings begin to rotate, and a screen displays all the symbols in close-up. Suddenly, Daniel asks to pause the video on one of them and draws additional symbols from the stone tablets directly on the screen. He creates an image of 2 figures praying beside a pyramid with the sun shining above. This corresponds to the 7th point, that the scientists could not identify, as the seventh point is the original location. The pyramid with the circle must represent Earth. The scientists immediately begin entering the 7 symbols into the computer. Suddenly, a red alert goes off, prompting all personnel to evacuate the room containing the ring as the control room begins to shake. The scientists persist and finally enter the last symbol into the computer. This activates the Stargate, and a large, bright vortex emerges rapidly, transforming into a wormhole. The military sends a probe through the portal, and it disappears from sight while continuing to transmit signals. Analyzing the received data, the scientists determined that the probe was transported to a location in the Calum galaxy. Suddenly, the probe signal is lost, and the portal closes. The military and scientists study the images captured by the probe and conclude that the portal is a means of traveling between worlds. Furthermore, the atmosphere of this unknown planet matches that of Earth. Daniel then notes that the other portals have different symbols that, when deciphered, might lead back to Earth. General West, however, wishes to halt the research, as they cannot gather more information at this time. Daniel offers to travel to the other world and conduct the research himself. After exchanging glances, West and O'Neill approve Daniel's participation in the mission. They then go to a secret room to examine mysterious fossils that were also excavated beneath the stone slabs in 1928. Meanwhile, Daniel prepares for the journey, and Catherine gives him a raw amulet that she found at the same site as the Stargate. She claims that the amulet has always brought her luck and hopes it does the same for Daniel. The military personnel, led by O'Neill and Daniel, are finally ready to pass through the portal. First, they send the necessary equipment through the portal, which immediately disappears from sight. Then, all team members cross the portal, teleporting through the universe in mere seconds. When the team regains consciousness, they shine flashlights and search the dark room, noting a similar portal. They then exit the room, walk through long corridors, and eventually realize they are in a desert with a replica of the Great Pyramid of Khufu situated in the middle. Using their equipment, the army begins to gather necessary data. Colonel O'Neill instructs Daniel to decipher the symbols on the portal so they can return through the wormhole in an hour. However, Daniel explains that, in addition to deciphering the symbols, he needs to determine their order on Earth. They figured this out from the stone tablets, but there is nothing similar here, so they need to find it. Kowalski confronts Daniel angrily, accusing him of not warning them about this need for search, leaving them uncertain about when they can return home. O'Neill intervenes, ordering Kowalski to set up camp nearby and then go back to the pyramid to plant a nuclear bomb in case of a serious threat. Kowalski soon interrupts him, reporting that the camp is set up. Meanwhile, Daniel settles into one of the tents, but the soldiers are hostile toward him, and one of them throws his suitcase over a sand dune. Daniel begins to gather his belongings and then stops to rest and have a snack. Suddenly, he notices tracks left by an unknown animal and decides to follow them. He soon finds a mysterious pack animal eating desert vegetation. Daniel cautiously approaches, tries to pet it, and then offers it some chocolate. Noticing Daniel's absence, the military follows his tracks and soon sees him near the animal, warning him to stay away. But Daniel shows the saddle and assures them that the animal is domesticated, then pets it on the neck. This startles the animal, causing it to run away. Daniel falls, and his foot gets caught in the rope. The soldiers try to help Daniel, but the animal runs too fast. Eventually, it stops and licks Daniel's face, bringing him back to consciousness. The soldiers catch up and free Daniel. Suddenly, the team hears strange sounds, and upon reaching the top of a dune, they discover a mine in the desert where hundreds of locals are working to extract valuable minerals. A young man named Skara notices the newcomers and alerts the others. O'Neill suggests that Daniel use his knowledge of ancient languages to try to communicate with the natives. Daniel approaches the crowd, and one man notices the raw amulet around his neck. He shouts something to the others, and suddenly, all the natives kneel before him. Confused by the locals' behavior, O'Neill approaches Skara and shakes his hand to show that they come in peace, but Skara shouts something and runs away. One of the soldiers scans the minerals the locals are mining and discovers that they are made of the same material as the Stargate. Meanwhile, Skara returns with the tribe leader, Kasu. The chief says something to the visitors and bows, but Daniel cannot understand. He then calls his daughter, Shay, and other women who offer drinks to the guests. The team bows in gratitude, and Daniel offers a piece of chocolate to Kasu, who cautiously takes a bite and finds it delicious. But Kasu signals for the team to follow him. Initially, the soldiers hesitate, but Daniel assures them that this way they will find the necessary information to return home. O'Neill agrees, but first contacts the soldiers who remain at the camp, warning them that they will be delayed. Kasu leads the guests to his stone city, and they make a long journey through the desert with hundreds of natives. As they approach their destination, Daniel starts sneezing due to the dust, amusing the locals. In the city, the team is again received with respectful bows and shown a metal disc with the symbol of the Eye of Ra. Daniel explains to the soldiers that Ra is the Egyptian sun god, and it seems that the locals believe that Ra sent them. Suddenly, one of the villagers sounds an alarm, and everyone begins to panic and scatter. At the same time, the soldiers receive a call from the camp warning of an approaching sandstorm. They attempt to inform O'Neill and the others that they need to return to the pyramid, but due to interference, they cannot hear each other. The team soon notices the locals closing all the gates and mistakenly thinks they are being captured. The soldiers start firing and even take 2 people hostage. Skara then offers to take O'Neill with him. The colonel agrees, and Skara leads him to show him the incoming storm. Realizing the situation, O'Neill informs his men that the locals are not dangerous and says they will have to wait out the storm there. At night, the natives hold a feast and offer the guests a variety of dishes. Daniel decides to try the unusual meat to avoid offending the townsfolk. The soldiers watch his reaction, but Daniel assures them that it tastes good and is very similar to chicken. O'Neill takes another look at the symbol of the Eye of Ra. He theorizes that if the locals recognize one Egyptian symbol, they might know others and could help them decipher them. Daniel approaches Kasu and begins to draw symbols in the sand. However, Kasu immediately wipes them away with his foot and starts shouting at the others. The villagers quickly wrap Daniel in a blanket and take him away. The locals take Daniel to another room, where they scrub him, bathe him, and anoint him with aromatic oils before leaving him. Confused, Daniel wonders what is happening until Shay enters the room and begins to undress. Dazed, Daniel interrupts her, saying she doesn't need to do that. Although she doesn't understand him, he takes her outside the room, but Kasu watches them fearfully, thinking Shay displeases Daniel. To avoid offending Kasu, Daniel takes Shay back to the room. Instead of making love, he draws a pyramid in the sand, trying to explain that they arrived through it. Initially frightened, Shay backs away from the drawing, but then decides to add a circle above the pyramid. Daniel realizes that she has seen the symbol before and knows about Earth. Shay uses gestures to confirm his guess and offers to take him somewhere. Shay leads Daniel to a cave with many hieroglyphs on the walls. He begins to read them aloud in ancient Egyptian, and Shay corrects his pronunciation, allowing them to communicate in a language they both understand. Meanwhile, the soldiers at the pyramid unsuccessfully try to contact Kowalski. Suddenly, the pyramid begins to tremble, and a strong beam of light from the same spaceship seen at the beginning of the film descends upon it. The ship slowly descends over the pyramid, enveloping it. The soldiers scatter and begin to explore the corridors. Unexpectedly, unknown creatures emerge from the darkness and attack them. One of the soldiers catches a glimpse of a guardian with the face of the god Anubis and glowing blue eyes. Soon, several guards take the soldiers to a room with a sarcophagus. Meanwhile, in the stone city, Skara notices O'Neill smoking and becomes fascinated with his lighter. The colonel shows him how it works and then hands it to the young man. Curiously, Skara takes a cigarette and tries to smoke it, but after the first puff, he coughs violently and tosses it away. Then, Skara tries to grab the colonel's gun, but O'Neill quickly pulls it away from him, causing Skara to run off terrified. Shortly after this, O'Neill tries to contact the soldiers who remained in the pyramid, but receives no response. This time, however, it is not due to interference. The soldiers are simply not responding. Skara returns to his friends and shows them the gift he received from O'Neill. O'Neill notices that Daniel has been missing for a while and decides to ask Skara and his friends about him. He shows Daniel's vest and tries to describe Daniel's appearance with gestures, but the confused boy simply imitates his movements. Then O'Neill sneezes and mimics the sounds Daniel made when trying their food, and Skara finally understands what O'Neill wants. Skara takes Daniel's vest and offers it to his animal to sniff and track him by scent. The creature immediately bolts from the stable, and the group follows it. They soon find Daniel and Shay in a cave. O'Neill is surprised that Daniel managed to converse with Shay, considering he didn't seem to understand the language before. Daniel explains that he had to learn the proper pronunciation, as no one in modern times could teach him. Daniel also shares with O'Neill everything he has learned about the history of this planet, discovering that a member of another race, Ra, was trying to save his people from extinction by traveling across galaxies in search of the secret of eternal life. One day, around 8,000 years before Christ, Ra discovered that Earth was inhabited by a primitive race of humans. He realized that a human body could give him a new life and chose a boy who approached the light. Ra took over the boy's body and became the ruler, using the Stargate. He transported many humans to this planet to work in mines, extracting an essential mineral for his eternal life. However, a rebellion eventually occurred on Earth, and the Stargate was buried. Fearing another rebellion on this planet, Ra banned reading and writing to prevent people from remembering the truth. Suddenly, Daniel is interrupted by Kowalski, who invites him to see an intriguing discovery: a rounded stone with symbols similar to those they found on Earth. Daniel examines the stone excitedly, guessing that the locals hid it here, hoping that the Earthgate would reopen one day, but soon discovers that the seventh symbol is worn down, making it impossible to return. Disappointed, O'Neill announces that they are going back to the pyramid. The team departs, with Skara and his friends secretly following them. When they arrive at the pyramid and find a spaceship instead, the team grows anxious, gripping their weapons tightly. They enter but find no sign of their colleagues. Soon, a guardian with a staff notices them and starts shooting at the soldiers. O'Neill and Daniel rush to the room with the atomic bomb, only to find it has vanished. Suddenly, an opening in the ceiling appears, and 3 guards descend in a beam of light, teleporting O'Neill and Daniel to a vast hall. At that moment, the ship shifts shape, allowing sunlight to flood the room. Ra, surrounded by his entourage, approaches and displays the bomb, proclaiming that he will not allow them to destroy his world. As Ra and his guards remove their masks to reveal their human appearances, O'Neill seizes the opportunity to grab a weapon from one of the guards, but the Egyptians prove stronger. Daniel is wounded in the abdomen, and O'Neill is knocked down with a baton. Ra orders his guards to stop, then approaches Daniel to examine his amulet. O'Neill is thrown into a pool of water with the other soldiers while Daniel is taken away. Meanwhile, Skara and his friends are looking at the belongings of the Earthlings when they suddenly see 2 jets leaving the pyramid. The jets head toward the stone city and begin relentless bombardment. Skara and his friends return to their hometown to find widespread destruction and many injured people. Shay tells Skara that Ra is punishing them for helping the strangers. She asks about Daniel, but Skara does not respond. Sometime later, Daniel awakens in a sarcophagus and discovers that his wound has healed. He climbs out of the sarcophagus and soon finds Ra's quarters. Daniel asks Ra if he was alive after the injury, and Ra explains that he chose the human race because human bodies are easy to heal. Ra then says that they should not have opened the portal because he now plans to send the bomb back to Earth, augmented with minerals that will exponentially increase its destructive power. Ra also takes Daniel's amulet and orders him to kill all his companions to ensure that none of his slaves doubt his authority. If Daniel refuses, Ra threatens to kill him and all who saw him. Soon after, Skara and his friends find Shay in a cave and inform her that Ra ordered everyone to gather for an execution. The girl declares that they cannot allow this and shares the story of their people as told to her by Daniel. Shortly after, the townspeople gather in the square. The guards present Daniel with a staff and order him to execute the team, but then he notices Skara in the crowd using the lighter to reflect light and catch Daniel's attention. Skara indicates that they have the soldiers' weapons, and Daniel, understanding their plan, opens fire on the guards. A shootout ensues, but the entire team, except for one soldier, manages to escape. Despite another sandstorm, the team and the rebels reach a safe cave. Suddenly, O'Neill demands the return of his weapons and wants Skara and his friends to leave. However, Kowalski points out that they have nowhere to go and could help in the fight. Infuriated, O'Neill asks what they are fighting for, and Daniel finally suggests telling everyone about the bomb. O'Neill admits that he was ordered to return the team at the first sign of danger and detonate the Stargate. But things did not go as planned, and now the bomb could destroy the entire Earth. Meanwhile, Ra is furious that the guards let the strangers and rebels escape. He puts on a special device and slowly kills one of the guards with it. Soon, Daniel discovers that all the townspeople consider him and Shay to be husband and wife. Surprised, he asks her about it, and she replies that she never told anyone that anything happened between them. To protect Shay, he kisses her in front of everyone. The next day, Daniel sees Skara drawing the day of their victory on a stone. He realizes that the symbol of their planet is a pyramid with 3 moons, meaning this is the 7th point they have been losing. The group then goes to the mines, where they prove to Kasu and the other inhabitants that those who they believe to be gods are just ordinary people in masks. Shocked, the inhabitants decide to overthrow their rulers. The team and the rebels disguise themselves as unsuspecting slaves and head for Ra's ship, while Ra instructs his minions to send the bomb to Earth through the Stargate as quickly as possible. Inside the pyramid, they open fire against the guards. An intense shootout begins, and several jets fly from the ship, attacking the enraged townspeople at the entrance to the pyramid. Meanwhile, O'Neill reaches the bomb and activates it, intending to stay behind and blow up the portal as soon as everyone returns to Earth. Daniel and Shay try to convince him not to do this, and suddenly a guard appears and shoots Shay. Daniel crouches over her body, but then an opening appears in the ceiling. He grabs her and heads for the sarcophagus, which immediately revives Shay with 4 minutes remaining until the explosion. O'Neill continues to fight the guard, and Ra finds Daniel and Shay trying to kill the scientist with his device. O'Neill manages to defeat the guard and uses the stone in the guard's hand to activate the ceiling portal, descending rings that behead the guard. Thanks to the open passage, Ra is distracted, and Daniel seizes the opportunity to snatch his amulet and returns with Shay to the portal room with less than 2 minutes left on the timer. O'Neill tries to disarm the bomb, but discovers that Ra modified it, making it impossible to deactivate. Meanwhile, outside, the inhabitants realize they are losing, but then Kasu appears with an enraged crowd. Seeing that their forces are insufficient, Ra raises his ship high above the planet to save himself. But then, Daniel reactivates the ceiling portal, and he and O'Neill send the bomb directly to Ra's ship. Seeing the glow in the sky, all the inhabitants rejoice in their long-awaited victory and freedom, thanking O'Neill for their salvation. The soldiers prepare to return home, but Daniel decides to stay with Shay on her planet. The scientist bids farewell to O'Neill and asks him to return Catherine's medallion, which indeed brought him luck.